Welcome to the Gamescape, everybody. My name is Jeric, and today we're back in Phoenix Point, and this is my guide to the new Kaos Engines DLC and all of the new stuff that's in it. So we're going to take some time. We're going to take an in-depth look at all of the new vehicle modules. We're going to take a look at all the new weapons and their stats. We're going to talk about what they did with the Mutogs, and we're going to look over the personal weapons, and we're of course going to be taking a look at the Kaos Buggy. So I've kind of spawned in one of everything here. This is my test game, so I have all kinds of money and resources and everything. Don't pay any mind to that. This is just so I can showcase all of this stuff for you guys. So I've got one of each of these vehicles, and so we're going to take a look at each one. Let's start with the Espida. I think the Espida got the most love in this particular patch, aside from the Kaos Buggy. I think the Espida came out pretty much smelling like a rose as far as the upgrades and stuff go. It really is quite good at this point. With the standard Espida, you have the 700 hull points, just like normal, and you have your tech arms. Those are still how the Espida comes in. And so I've covered the Espida in another video. If you want to see that, go ahead and go check out that video. But so far, everything's the same. But now, with the new modules, every vehicle has two new weapons besides the one that it comes with, has two engine upgrades and two hull upgrades. So these are the hulls, these are the engines. It also has an inventory now, which is new. The vehicles had an inventory previously, but your soldier had to climb into the vehicle and then drop or pick up whatever they were carrying or wanted to deposit inside the vehicle. And it effectively, the vehicle acted like the same way that the ground does when you're dropping stuff and picking it up. So you couldn't preload anything into the vehicles for the soldiers. You couldn't really do much when you're outside of the vehicle. There was no way to access its inventory from outside. So they've added an inventory. So good and bad parts to this. Number one, previously it was unlimited. There was an infinite number of boxes. You could just put as much in there as you wanted to. Now you're limited to 9 boxes, just like your soldiers are. You have 3 ready slots. The first one is your weapon, the second one is your hull upgrade, and the third one is your engine upgrade. And those are, fixed that way. You cannot have like 2 weapons and a hull upgrade. It has to be one of each, or you can leave them empty, obviously. You can't unequip a weapon. You always have to have a weapon equipped. You can swap it out, but you can't take it out, right? So that's that. The upside for the inventory is now soldiers can access the inventory from outside the vehicle, and you can preload things into the vehicle for the soldiers. So the vehicle can, for instance, carry extra ammunition, can carry extra turrets for your technician, for example, whatever your soldiers can't carry by themselves because they're too weighed down, or that you think you need to add, throw a few extra med kits in, whatever, right? Your vehicle can now carry plenty. It's got plenty of endurance, encumbrance, 70 for the Espida. You aren't going to put 70 weight worth of stuff into these spaces. It's not going to happen. Stuff doesn't weigh that much. And so you don't have to worry about the encumbrance getting filled up at all. So, and that's true for all of these vehicles. So that's one of the nicer things about it. Again, you don't have the infinite capacity that you used to have. A couple of the vehicles have modules, and we'll see those that increase the inventory slots, though. So we'll take a look at that too. So let's take a look first at the weapons that the Espida got. So generally speaking, these vehicles have their base weapon. They have an upgrade to that base weapon that's pretty much just a pure straight upgrade. And then they have a new weapon that is different, right? So in the case of the Espida, you have the arms, which do shock damage, or paralysis damage rather, and they can also be used with the full restore to heal and repair targets and remove 50% paralysis, right? So these are up close and personal. You have to be right next to the vehicle, or the vehicle has to be right next to your soldier for these to work. And so the upgraded one is the Themis NT, which is basically a couple of Athena sniper rifles welded onto robot arms and overcharged with more power. So if we take a look at this thing, it's actually super good. Damage 10, just because you have to do damage to something to apply the paralysis damage. It's also got 50 piercing. So this thing is good up to 70 armor. So basically a Scylla is the only thing. There's a couple of pieces. There's a couple of parts on the Scylla that have 80 armor and maybe 70. But this thing will pierce everything up to 70. So 69 or less. And it does 20 paralysis with a burst of 4. So that's 80 paralysis if all 4 shots hit at effective range 45, which is the same as your Cyclops or your Raven sniper rifles. So instead of a melee attack that does 40 paralysis, because this is burst 2, you have a sniper rifle ranged attack that does up to 80 if all 4 shots hit. Now, I was thinking about that. 80 is a little bit of a strange place to put the damage because it's way more than enough to paralyze anything small, right? Siren sized or less. Way more than enough. Like sirens, you know, have to be, I think some of them take 50 something, 55, 50, yeah, maybe even up to 60. And, you know, the heaviest Arthron is the Shield Bearer Champion or Shield Bearer Prime. It's got, takes 44 paralysis. So 80 is a lot of overkill for those guys. And it's not quite enough to paralyze an Acheron or a Chiron. So those guys take 90 to 120, I think it is, depending on which ones they are. The Acherons do. And the Chirons are north of 60. I think they're in the 75 range usually, approximately that. So one volley from this is way overkill for most things and not quite enough for others. And then you have the Silas, which are the big ones. And they start out at 3,200 health, which means they take 320 paralysis damage. So it's just one, it's every 10 health is 1 paralysis damage they need to take if you're not familiar with how it works. And so, but if we look at this though, we can see this thing has 16 shots, each of which do 20 paralysis damage. That's 320 paralysis damage, which is just exactly enough to paralyze a Scylla Xenagos, which is the smallest of the Scylla, or the base Scylla, basically. Now, it's not going to quite be right because it's going to take you more than one turn to dish that damage unless you've got a technician with you, in which case you're going to, you know, the Scylla's going to wear off a couple of points of paralysis, you know, each turn, one per turn. But it's close enough, right? And this thing, even without that, if it stands still, which is very possible, and fires twice at that Scylla, odds are good it's going to hit all 4 shots, and odds are good it's going to get to do that twice. And that's going to be 50% of the Scylla paralyzed in one turn by this vehicle, which is amazing. I mean, it's a chore to get a Scylla paralyzed because there's so much that it has to take. Normally you're shooting Hera's and Athena's at it. You know, your Hera's doing 7 points of damage, you know, and you're working your way up to 320, or your Athena, you know, if you are at the point in the game where you have them, is doing 16, still on your way up to 320. So even then you're looking at 20 rounds from those sniper rifles, plus whatever it's wearing off between turns. This thing makes paralyzing big things very, very easy, especially if you've got a technician with it that has remote control and can force it to fire again using the technician's 2 action points instead of the vehicle's 2 action points. Very, very, very good. Very impressed with this. And if you need capture, if you need big things captured, this thing's going to be your go-to. Now, it does have limited ammo. Like I said, 16 shots. That's 4 total bursts from these weapons. So you have to make sure you place those shots right. But with the speed of 32, which can be even upgraded with the engine modules we'll talk about in a second, you can move this thing to exactly the right place that it needs to be to get the perfect shot. And obviously, if you move, you're only going to be able to get 1 shot because it's 2 action points to fire. And so you're going to use up one of your action points, or at least part of one of them, to do the move, and you won't have the 4 that you need to do the extra shots. But still, you can place this thing exactly where it needs to be to get the shots in. Okay, so that's excellent. I really, really like this Themis upgrade for the weapons. The next one is the Apollo laser cannons. Again, basically it's a pair of Pythagoras sniper rifles that are hooked onto robot arms and then overcharged. And these things are really good. 120 damage, which is the same as the Pythagoras. Burst of 2, because there's 2 of them firing. But look at the effective range. Effective range on this thing is 82. That is almost double the effective range of the Pythagoras. And that's just incredibly good. This thing is shooting fleas off the back of a camel's back, basically. The only weapon I know of that has better effective range than this is the Destiny 3, which is a mounted weapon on heavy armor. It has a range of 1,000, basically effective range of 1,000. It just doesn't miss. You pick a spot and it hits that thing. But this is close to that, right? I mean, it's possible to miss. You're not going to have perfect shots with this, but it's going to be a really, really tight circle on your aiming, and you're pretty much going to be able to put that anywhere you want it. So you're looking at basically 240 points of damage that are almost guaranteed to hit. It's got 2 action points to fire. So again, you can fire it twice in a round if you don't move. Ammo capacity is 12, so it's 6 total shots. 6 shots of 2 bursts each. So another really, really nice upgrade to the Espida, where it didn't have any offensive capability before other than paralyzation. Now you can actually put weapons on it and do really good damage with it. So I really like those. The hull modules are, this one is mediocre. I don't know if you would ever really want this, but it's available. Basically all it does is it adds 1 extra seat. So currently the Espida unmodified can carry 1 soldier internally. This thing allows it to carry 2. Is that worth it? I don't know. Probably not in most cases, especially given what the other module is. And we're going to talk about that in 3 seconds here. But there might be some edge cases where you have a vehicle and 2 soldiers as your team. I don't know if you'd ever do that or not, but that would fit on a Helios, right? So that would be 5 slots. So your vehicle could carry both of the other soldiers, and maybe that's what you've got going on, and maybe that's what you want. I don't know. Personally, I think this is probably not worth the time and effort and the money to get it, but that's up to you. And it, again, always depends on your squad loadout, your play style, how you're building your squads, etc. So if you have a use for it, perfect, use it. Awesome. But when you compare that to this one, it pales, because this module is the Psychic Jammer, and this thing is absolutely going to be clutch for you. This grants mind control immunity to all nearby allies. It doesn't specify how far away it is, so I brought it into a map and tested it out, and it's a radius of 8 tiles from the center of your vehicle. So the vehicle is 3x3, so that middle tile, it's 8 tiles out from there, or 7 tiles out from the edges of your vehicle. And it has a nice light blue dome that shows exactly how far away it is. And they've also added a nice little feature that when your soldiers are within range of the mind control immunity, they get this little circle and kind of little sparkly lines coming up from their feet that show that they're in the radius and that they have the mind control immunity. So that's really great. But yeah, normally though, when my soldiers, when my missions go south, it's usually because one of my soldiers gets mind controlled. And so this ability stops that from happening, whether it's a priest or whether it's a siren or whether it's a mind fragger. Those mind fraggers, they'll just scurry around your soldiers. They can't make the jump and mind control your guys at all. And so this is just such a clutch ability and will really save you a lot of heartache and trouble. Unless you have an absolute need for that extra +1 seat, I would put the Psychic Jammer on your Espida and I would never ever take it off, because that's going to save you just so much trouble. The engine upgrades are both really good too. The first one is the experimental thrusters technology. Both of these grant mobility, neither one of them by increasing the speed though. They actually do it by adding different abilities to your Espida that it can activate. So the first one adds the leap ability. And what leap is it's the ability to jump 10 tiles, just like your jet jump from your heavy armor. And it costs 2 action points to activate, no will points or anything. Obviously, your vehicle doesn't have any will points. So you can do 2 leaps per turn. Now, it's only 10 tiles, and your Espida has a base speed of 32. So 1 action point move normally is 8. So 2 action point moves normally is 16. So you're giving up a little bit of distance, right? You're going to move 10 instead of the 16 you could have moved for the same 2 action points. But what this does is it allows you to jump over intervening obstacles that you can't normally drive through. So rocks, you know, short walls, things like that, you can just leap right over them and get past whatever that blocking terrain is. Now, it's not going to get you past trees, right? And it's not going to get you past high walls, but still, there's plenty of times when it's just a rock, you know, a boulder blocking your path, and you need to get through there. This will allow you to just leap right over that boulder and continue on your way. The second ability, the second hull upgrade, I should say, grants the dash ability. And this thing is just hugely mobile. Dash allows you to move up to half your movement for 1 action point. You can activate it twice per turn. And so what that means is 2 dashes would be your normal full movement, and you still have 2 action points left, which you can also still use to move. So really, if you put all of your, you know, you dash twice and you put your other 2 movement points into movement as well, you're going to move 48 tiles. And that's almost all the way across most maps. Most maps are 56 by 56 tiles. And so that makes your Espida extremely mobile. And there's a lot of times where that really is clutch because especially in missions where you have to like say rescue the independent soldiers, for instance, you got to get to them quick in a lot of missions because they start out oftentimes in big trouble. And if you can't get there pretty fast, they're going to get mind controlled or they're going to get killed by the Pandorans. So being able to get there in 1 turn is huge. And with this module, you can usually do it, right? 48 squares is going to get you pretty much anywhere you need to be on the map, except for like from 1 corner all the way to the other corner. The other nice thing about this extra mobility is it gets you in a place where you can use your weapons effectively, right? And so you've got your ranged weapons, you've got your sniper cannons here. That extra mobility allows you to maneuver to a place where you can get the optimal firing range. One of the things I have noticed with these cannons is that they're set kind of wide apart and they don't do very well against targets that are very close. So you want to be back a little ways from your target when you're firing these cannons, because usually what'll happen is one will hit and the other one will just kind of fire straight forward and miss, not by a little bit, by just a ton, like not even in the ballpark of hitting. So you want to be farther away, especially with their, you know, high accuracy anyway. And so your extra mobility from these engine modules is going to help you do that, and especially from the dash, you know, the hybrid engine technology one that gives you dash. That's going to allow you to move back farther away. So those are the upgrades for the Espida. Nothing here gives it more toughness. That's the only thing. This is always been the weakest of the 3 vehicles, now the weakest of the 4 vehicles with the Kaos Buggy involved. And so that hasn't changed. You do have to be a little careful with it because it is fragile. It doesn't have the heaviest armor and it doesn't have a whole bunch of hit points compared to the other vehicles. So if something big gets up on top of you, you're going to be kind of in a big trouble quickly with this particular one. So highly recommend bringing a technician with this vehicle, but it's not 100% necessary. It'll do fine on its own as long as you've got some other soldiers to support it. So really good upgrades for the Espida. I've been really pleased to see what they had there. All right, the Scarab is next. This is your Phoenix Point vehicle, just the vanilla one that you get right away in the game, building and manufacture. Normally, it's got the missile launchers on the top, and they're decent. You got a 80 blast, 20 shred, which is pretty good. It's a burst of 2, so it always fires 2 missiles at a time. The effective range on it is 40 squares. That's a long way. Now, at 40 squares, the deviation of your missiles is pretty big. They can definitely miss their targets, but it's pretty good still. They usually land close to the target, and with 2 shots, you're probably going to hit your target at least once, if not twice. So that's really good. Blast radius on these is 3.5 squares, so it's a 7 square circle is the blast radius, so pretty good size. 3 action points to fire the heavy weapon, of course. So you can't move much if you're going to fire, but you can make the shot. Ammo capacity is 8, and this is pretty normal. You're going to get 4 shots with the vehicle, and that's pretty normal with most of the vehicles. So that's the base weapon. The upgraded version of this is the Scorpio 7. Basically a straight upgrade all across the board. 120 blast damage instead of 80. Shred is still 20. Effective range slightly higher at 45 instead of 40. Blast radius 5.5 instead of 3.5. So now you're looking at 11 tile square, circle. A circle 11 tiles across, which is a really big area. Still 3 action points to fire it. You still have four volleys of burst 2. It is just a straight up upgrade for the Gemini turret. And then the other weapon that you have, and this is something that the Scarab needed, was a direct fire weapon. Basically, it's just a bigger version of the heavy cannon that your heavy troopers can carry. Damage 350, also 350 shock. So how shock damage works is if the shock damage exceeds the hit points of the target, they'll get dazed. Dazed Pandorans or other targets on their next turn only have 1 action point. They cannot spend will points in any way, and they have a 50% accuracy penalty on their ranged weapons. So dazing a target is a really good way to basically just take it out of the equation for a turn. And so anytime you have shock damage that's reliable, like 350, most things are less than 350 health. It's a good thing. The effective range on it is 17, which is okay. It's not great. And the Scarab doesn't have the speed that the Espida does. So it's not as good at getting to where it needs to be to fire this cannon. You want to be up close and personal with that cannon so you're sure to hit, because the accuracy isn't great. And like I said, it's 3 action points still to fire. So you're only going to get a quarter move if you're going to fire your cannon. So it's not as good, but it's still good. And the reason why the Scarab needed a direct fire weapon is for base defense. If you have a Scarab in a base defense and it's got its missile launcher on, it's pretty much completely worthless, because the arc of the missiles is so high that they just go up and they explode against the ceiling and you can't hit anything in the base at all. It's really aggravating if you're trying to defend a base. This gives it a direct fire weapon that doesn't have that problem. Same if you were to take them into like a Pandoran nest or some other indoor structure. That's about it probably. The nests have fairly low ceilings as well. They're basically supposed to be tunnels. Now, I don't normally recommend bringing vehicles into nests because they have very narrow passages sometimes in those nests, and your vehicle can't always get through where it needs to go. And then your soldiers have to continue on their own without the vehicle support. But if you're going to, especially if it happens early in the game, which is a possibility, you can get the direct fire cannon instead of the missile launcher. And so it's, again, 4 shots. You got to be very selective with what you shoot, but it's 350 damage and 30 shred with each one of those shots. So save it for the big stuff and make sure that you're close enough to hit it. Let your soldiers take care of the small stuff. Don't waste your ammo on the smaller things if you can help it. So those are the new weapons for the Scarab. It also has two hull mounts. The first one is reinforced cargo racks. Now this one is really good if you are doing scavenger missions with your Scarab and you need the extra space to put stuff into the vehicle so your soldiers don't have to carry it and have them get weighed down and not moving very quickly. So what this thing does is it adds 6 inventory slots with no penalties, right? So now you've got, a whole bunch of slots here that you're good to go. And instead of 9, now you've got 15 slots, and you can put just a ton of stuff into this thing and pick up all the stuff out of the crates, and it really works out nice. The other one is pretty good. The other hull upgrade is pretty good. It's the carbon fiber plating. And what it gives you is an extra 20 armor on every position except for the turret. That includes the tracks. It's the front, the sides, the rear, the tracks, and it extra 20 armor and acid resistance. Why acid resistance? Because of this module right here. This one is the reinforced caterpillar tracks. This is something I have argued that vehicles should all be able to do, but in this case, it's just this particular vehicle gets it. And what this thing does is a -6 speed penalty, but the Scarab can run over and destroy worms, mine fraggers, and myrmidons. And so there's now some counterplay to the myrmidons that are really tough, especially the acid myrmidons. The acid myrmidons are very tough. They're hard. They're pretty well armored for their size, and they have a lot of hit points for their size. You can shoot an acid myrmidon in the torso with a sniper rifle and not take out its torso. And so this thing allows the tank, the Scarab, to just run it over and destroy it. Problem is, when you run over or when you kill an acid myrmidon or a poison myrmidon for that matter, they explode and spray acid or poison all over the place. So this gives you acid resistance. The vehicles, all of them are immune to poison, so that's not an issue. But this gives it acid resistance, so when you're running over those acid myrmidons, it's not hurting you too bad. You're going to take about five acid damage probably, and it's going to eat just a little tiny bit of your armor off, and you're just going to move on your way, and everything's going to be just fine. So these two together are pretty good. You're very slow though with this. The -6 speed penalty, you know, the Scarab is the slowest of the vehicles anyway at 24, I believe, is its base speed. And so this brings it down to 18, which isn't very fast for a vehicle. So it's a trade-off if you're going to have the caterpillar tracks. But what they allow is for even when you run out of ammunition, your Scarab still is serving a purpose in that it can take care of the small stuff, and your troops don't have to waste action points and ammunition killing mine fraggers, killing, you know, worms from the Chirons, or killing the myrmidons that are harassing your troops. So it's a good thing. The other engine upgrade is a plus speed boost. No other penalties or bonuses, just extra +6 speed. That gets it up to 30, which is not quite as fast as the Espida, but still pretty good. So 30 speed really is going to help you get into position to use your heavy cannon. I really do not recommend, if you're going to put the cannon on, I do not recommend using the cannon and the reinforced caterpillar tracks, because you can't get to where you need to be to fire this cannon with these slower tracks on. So if you're going with the cannon, go with the engine upgrade that gives you plus speed instead, the advanced engine mapping module. You're going to be a lot happier because you'll be able to move a little bit more easily into position to really get the most use out of your cannon and really get that good shot on the target that isn't going to miss, or is less likely to miss anyway. So those are the upgrades to the Scarab. Next up is the Armadillo, New Jericho's tank or armored vehicle. Comes normally with the Hailstorm Gauss turret, and it's a damage 40, shred 5, burst 8, effective range is only 13. Very short range weapon, very inaccurate. But it's kicking out 8 rounds, and each round that hits is going to do 40 damage, 5 shred, which is decent. And it's got a good amount of ammo too. You can take 8 shots with it before you're done. At 2 action points per shot, that's 4 full turns if you don't move a firing. So this one's got a little more ammo than most of the other vehicles do for their weapons. Pretty good. And the base speed on the Armadillo is 28, so it's a little faster than the Scarab. It can get into position to fire this thing a little bit more easily. The upgrade to that is the Mephistopheles flamethrower. This one is... I'm on the fence about these two weapons a little bit. So the bonus, the plus side of the flamethrower is it doesn't miss. It's an area of effect attack, and as long as you line up your cone correctly, and when you fire this weapon, you're presented with a firing cone that you can move around, and you can just click where you want it to be, and then the flamethrower fires along that cone. It's 80 damage and 40 fire damage, and it's going to hit every body part that it touches. So it's actually quite good, despite being 80 damage. Against big things, it's less good because you're not going to probably hit more than 1 or 2 body parts. But against the smaller targets like sirens and stuff, it's going to hit pretty much everything, and they're going to be on fire, and they're going to take a whole bunch of damage, and it's going to leave a fire patch on the ground so that when they move through the fire patch, they're going to continue to take fire damage and more damage from that. And fire can really mess up, especially the smaller Pandorans, very quickly. Some of them are dumb, like mine fraggers. Mine fraggers will charge right through flames to get at your guys. They don't even care. And usually 2 or 3 squares of fire will kill a mine fragger, and it's usually not going to get to your guys. So Fire is useful for controlling where Pandorans can go and where they can't go. The bigger, tougher ones, they can run through fire and still survive, but a lot of times they'll lose a leg or an arm or something doing it. Effective range on this thing is only 12. Again, it's not a very long range. And that's basically the length of the cone that you're going to have. At its widest, it's three tiles wide. And if you were to fire it like straight down from above, it would be a 3x3 circle is what it would take out. But since you're firing on an angle kind of out in front of you, it actually stretches that. So it's basically 3 tiles wide at its midpoint, and then it's probably more like 6 tiles long or something like that is the flame patch. So it's kind of long and narrow, but useful as a barrier. Plus, if you know, like I said, whatever you hit directly with, it's just going to burn and is probably going to die very quickly. If you don't kill it outright, it'll probably die on the next turn from the fire damage. 2 action points to fire it, only 4 ammo. Again, got to be very selective with where and when you take the shots. But it's doesn't miss like the hailstorm can. If it just hits everything in the cone, including all body parts in the cone, as far as I can tell. So that's the kind of the upgrade to the Gauss turret is the flamethrower, and then it got a indirect fire weapon, which is the Armadillo, the Purgatory grenade launcher. Blast 20, shred 5, fire damage 40 in a 3.5 tile radius. So you got a 7 tile circle of fire that you're putting down out there with 20 blast and 5 shred for everything that hits. Now the blast damage itself isn't that much, but the fire damage is decent. And again, you're putting down a big fire patch that can be used to kind of control where the Pandorans can go and where they can't go. And, you know, like I said, some of them are just dumb and will just charge right through it, especially if they don't have anything better to do. And so it's okay. I've played with it just a little bit. It's definitely a support weapon more than it is a direct killing weapon. But there are a lot of times when a big fire patch can really save the day. If you've seen my playthrough, there was one mission that we were on where there was a silo in a haven, and a couple of incendiary grenades basically turned the silo into, well, it immobilized it basically because it destroyed its legs, you know, trying to run through the fire. It just took more and more damage every tile that it moved. And by the time it got to, you know, out of the fire, all of its legs had burned and it couldn't move anymore. And then I was able to just pick it apart from range. So fire is really good if you use it correctly. But again, you're not doing a whole bunch of direct damage with it. It's kind of more of a control. This is a control weapon to control where the enemy can go and put it, you know, if you put a fire patch right on somebody, they're going to probably burn trying to get out of it too. So that's another thing. But for the most part, like I said, the flamethrower and the Purgatory grenade launcher are both kind of more support weapons than they are direct damage weapons like the hailstorm is. So those are the weapons. Upgrades to the hull. The first one is lightweight alloy plating. I don't like this one. It's trade-off +3 inventory slots, but you're losing 10 armor off of every position except the wheels and the turret. So you're losing a lot of armor. These things have thick armor, especially on the front. They're 60 on the front. Now you're down to 50 on the front. You're down to, I think it's 30 on the sides, 20 in the rear, and 20 on the top. And so all of that lost armor for just 3 inventory slots. Not worth it in my book. I don't think it's worth it at all. So that's going to be the only time I would really ever see using this would be if the only vehicle you have is the Armadillo and you want to take it into a scavenging site. You might throw this on there for the extra 3 slots to pick up more inventory. Maybe. I don't like it though. The minus armor, I don't think that was necessary. I don't know why they put that limitation on it when they didn't have the same limitation on the Scarab that got +6 inventory slots for no penalty. I don't understand that, and I don't know why they did what they did, but I don't like it. I would probably never ever put this on an Armadillo if I had one. The other one is better. It is reinforced plating, which gives you pierce resistance. So piercing weapons like the Raven or the Piranha armor piercing assault rifle, they ignore a certain number of armor points and just bypass them. And then the damage just isn't affected by those armor points. This cuts that in half, reduces effective piercing damage by half. And so it basically makes your vehicle tougher against piercing weapons. Again, it isn't the best, but later in the game, you see quite a few Tritons that have piranhas and ravens. And so they can be a problem, especially the Raven, because the Raven has 60 pierce, which is how much front armor you have on this thing. So you're going to take full damage from that Raven hit, which is 120, I think. Something like that, 120, 130. I think it's 130 actually. So 130 direct damage, even from the front. It's just going to ignore all of your armor, and it's going to hit. So that's nice late in the game when the Tritons have the piercing weapons. Earlier in the game, it's probably not necessary. So you could probably save yourself some money by not ever buying either of these two. Maybe this one later in the game. The hull upgrades for these are very mediocre. I don't think either of them is anything to really write home about. Engine upgrades. The first one is a +7 speed, no extra penalties, no extra benefits. The second one is a +14, no extra penalties, no extra benefits. This one's more expensive. That's the only difference. So +14 speed onto this thing, it's already 28. So now you're looking at 42 base speed. That's pretty fast. That's almost as fast as the Espida with its dash module on. So 42 speed will allow you to run right up to whatever you want to shoot and riddle it with the hailstorm, or with the flamethrower for that matter. It gets you in position to use the flamethrower effectively as well. The plus speed for the grenade launcher, okay, it's maybe useful, but the grenade launcher has a nice long effective range anyway, 40 tiles. So it can fire a long way on its own without having to really move too far. So you might use it, you might not, but definitely, I mean, you want the speed anyway. I mean, absolutely put this module on it, the turbo engine upgrade, when you can get one and when you can afford it. If you're going to do it, you might as well have the extra speed. Armadillo kind of got the short end of the stick on the upgrades in this thing, I think. Next up is the Kaos Buggy. This is the new one, and it looks like an absolute piece of junk, but it is actually quite good. I'm going to come back in here so we see the right stats. Hit points 1480. The turrets on the Kaos Buggy, one of the big disadvantages of vehicles, and it was something I wished they had fixed and they didn't. I'm sure they thought about doing it and decided it was too overpowered. But one of the things I was hoping to see in this patch was the ability to reload these turrets, and you can't. They have the ammo they have, and when they're empty, they're empty. There's no reloading them. There's no switching them out. There's no anything. It's just you fire the shots and it's done until the next mission. The weapons for the Kaos Buggy, however, there are 2 weapons in each of the turrets, and each weapon has its own ammunition. So all 3 of these turrets have the minigun. So if we take a look at the minigun, it's damage 50, shred of 10, 8-round burst with a 13 effective range. Now that's not very far. This is a weapon you got to be up close and personal with. But the 50 shred times 8 is 400, or 50 damage times 8 is 400 total damage if all 8 of your shots hit, and you're doing 80 shred. Not many things shred 80 armor with 2 action points in this game. So that's really good. I really do like this, and it's got an ammo capacity of 64. So you get 8 total shots of 8 burst with this minigun. And like I said, the minigun's on all 3 of these turrets. Okay. So the Vishnu gun, which is the one that comes with the buggy when you buy it or when you build it, is a grenade launcher. Basically it's 80 blast, 10 shred, single shot with effective range of 40. So, and the blast radius is 3.5. So it's pretty close to what the missile turret is on the Scarab, except it's only a single shot instead of 2 shots. Otherwise, pretty much the same thing. And 10 shred instead of 20 shred. So still pretty good. And it's got 8 rounds. So you can fire this thing 8 times at 3 action points each. You're only going to be firing it once per turn, but still not bad. You're gonna have a decent amount of endurance with this turret and be able to stay in the fight for a while, because it's not going to run out of ammo nearly as fast. And that's really one of the big advantages of the Kaos Buggy over the other vehicles, is it does have more ammunition than they do. And so it does have a little more endurance in the fight. That's the base weapon. The upgrade to that is the Screamer. Again, it's got the minigun, same stats. It's also got the Screamer turret, the Screamer weapon, which is a blast 80 plus 20 sonic damage. Now, the sonic damage, how it works is if the sonic damage that it does exceeds the target's willpower. So if the target has 20 willpower or less, it's dazed, just like with shock damage, except it's against willpower instead of against the hit points. So anything that's got 20 or less, 20 or fewer will points is going to be dazed. They're going to be down to 1 action point, no will point spending the next turn, and 50% accuracy penalty. So again, dazing a target, really good way to take it out for a turn. This is nice. It does only have 4 shots on that weapon, but it is a blast radius where it hits. So that's it's a direct fire weapon, but it's got a blast radius. So it's a little bit strange. You do have to hit something. So it's I don't know, try it out. You'll see. You'll see. So pretty good weapon still. And again, you still have the minigun with its 8 shots too. So really, really nice. The third weapon is not that. It's this. Sorry, guys, got out of order here. It's the full stop. So again, the minigun and then the goo cannon on top of that. This thing puts down a 3.5 tile radius patch of goo. And so if you don't know what goo does, basically whatever's in the goo gets stuck down in place and it can't move for about 5 turns. I think it's 5 turns. So pretty solid crowd control ability. The downside to this thing is it's got 1 shot. You get 1 goo patch, so use it wisely. It's it doesn't have ammo listed here, you'll notice. And I did try it out, and it is just a single shot. After you fire it, it's out of ammo, and that's it. There's no reloading it. So again, use it wisely, but a really well-placed goo patch can really lock something down and allow you to kill it while it can't get to you to hurt you. So situationally, really, really good still. And you still have the minigun on top of that too. So it's not like, you have the 1 goo shot, the goo patch, and that's it. You still have the minigun as well. So I don't know. I like the other 2 weapons better, but I can definitely see edge case uses for the goo patch, especially if you're going to be up against something big like a Scylla or like a Acheron or something like that. You can get them glued down. Or if you happen to catch a bunch of Pandorans in a tight group, you can maybe goo them all down in one spot and then pick them all off. So it can really do a lot. And it's not only they get stuck down, but other things can't move through the goo either. So it's another, like the flames, you can use it to kind of control where Pandorans can and cannot go, because if they're not immune to goo, they can't run through the goo. They can't even enter it. So it's another way to lock them out, or at least manage where they're going and what paths they can take too. So that could be situationally good as well. So those are the weapons. The hull upgrades for this thing, both are decent. The spiked armor plating is going to give you 30 armor. It doesn't actually add armor. I don't know why it says 30. Maybe it's to the tires. I'm not sure. But what it does is it adds spiked armor ability, which means anytime a Pandoran or whoever comes up to you and hits with a melee attack, Pandorans do that quite a bit, especially like the Arthrons that have the claws. Anytime they hit you, they're going to suffer 30 points of damage as well. So that's just basically, catching on the spikes. If we put it on there, you can see all the spikes, sticking out and whatnot. So they're going to take damage every time they hit you with a melee attack, which is good for you, right? It's free damage on a Pandoran. If you're going to get hit anyway, you might as well do the damage back to them. So that's a good module. The other hull plate is the revised armor plating. And this one gives you blast resistance. And so one of the ways that you lose a turret pretty often is Pandorans that can fire grenades will start shooting grenades at the top of your vehicle, and your turret takes the brunt of that. This reduces that blast damage into half. which is really actually pretty good because the turret on this thing does not have good armor. It's the minigun has 15 armor and 150 health, and the other gun, whichever one it is, has 10 armor and 100 health. So it doesn't take too much to knock this turret off with a few grenades. Cutting that damage in half makes it a lot more survivable if you got a bunch of Arthrons popping grenades at you, or New Jericho soldiers throwing grenades, or whatever, whoever you happen to be fighting. So that's something that you're going to want to probably have. If you don't have either one of these is good. I mean, there's either one of these hull plates is good. So both are good. Use one that you think you're going to need for what you're going to be up against. Engine upgrades. This one is actually the better one. Let's look at this one first. The lower tier one is just a straight +5 speed boost. And then the second one is a +11 speed boost. And it's listed as having ammo, but it doesn't actually use the ammo, at least not as far as I've been able to tell in the maps. That ammo never actually goes down. When I first saw it, I thought maybe it used like 1 ammo per tile that you moved or something like that, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I don't know if it's a bug or if it's they just decided to not do that after all, and then they didn't take the ammo capacity out here or whatever. I don't really know exactly what's going on with that, but it doesn't seem to use the ammo unless it's using it and not updating the counter to show you that it's going down, which is, I guess, maybe possible too. 350 tiles is a long way. If it is using it to go, 1 per tile, it's a long way, 350 tiles, because the maps usually are only about 56 tiles across. So, you'd have to go back and forth across the map, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in order to burn up all that, even 7 times, I guess. So it's a lot of driving around 350 tiles. So maybe it's just keeping track in the back and doesn't update the counter, but you have a long time regardless. But the +11 speed is really good. And it really allows you to move quickly and get into position to use the Vishnu, the minigun. So really, again, really worth having this upgrade over this one. The only difference is the cost, as far as I can tell, and the ammo capacity. But again, I don't think it uses the ammo. So it's just the cost really is all. So go for this one if you can get it. And I think you're going to be pretty happy with that. So that is all of the different vehicles and all of their new modules and kind of how they stack up, what I think is good and what's not. You can customize the vehicles now. This is new as well, so you can change the colors on them. And they have, just like the soldiers, they have 2 different color sets, or 2 different regions. Different armor patterns, same as the soldiers too. It's all the same. But the other thing they kind of put in is you can turn fancy on, which basically makes it either silver or gold plated. I don't know if I like it. I don't particularly like the look of this. It looks weird to me. It's too flat. All one color like that. I'm not a fan of it myself, but I think other people do like it. So again, if you want it, you can use it. All the vehicles have these options. So you can do that to your Espida or your Scarab or whatever else too. So those are those, and that's how that goes out. So that's the vehicles. Let's talk for 1 second about the Mutogs, because they got a little bit of love too. I have a whole video on Mutogs, so if you want to watch that, you can see kind of these guys in depth. But just to summarize a couple of the problems that they have. Number one, they suffer the same problem that the vehicles do. They take up 3 slots on the airplane, but they can't really do the work of 3 soldiers, right? And so the devs have addressed that, and they reduced the deployment cost of these guys from 3 down to 2. So you can now put a Mutog on the plane and it only takes up 2 soldier slots. And I think that's a lot more in line with the capability of the Mutog than 3 was. Is it perfect? It's not probably perfect, because they're still maybe not quite as good as 2 soldiers, but it's a much, much, much closer than it was before. And these guys are tanky as heck. This guy here has 1700 health, and he's got 40 regen, 1 per leg, 10 per leg that's still in not disabled. So he can stay on the battlefield for a long time. He gets +2 extra action points when he gets a kill. That's common to all of the Mutogs too. And so if they can kill something, they can kind of chain a few kills together if they do it right. And a lot of the times you need support from your other soldiers to make that happen, but it's an option that's there. And normally you have to have an assault, spend will points to have that ability. All of them have 2 attacks, the head and the tail. They have different heads, different tails. This one here is the poison head. And the other change that they made to these guys was they upped the amount of will points that these guys have if they have the poison head from 20 up to 40. The problem with the Mutogs is they have almost nothing to spend those will points on. There's different legs. You got the regen legs and then the agile legs. The Mutogs that have the agile legs have the leap ability, much like what we saw with the Espida and its engine upgrade. They can leap 10 tiles, and it costs them action point and 2 will points to do that. That's the only thing that Mutogs can spend will points on. But the downside of it is, since they have will points, they are susceptible to all of the things that will points make them susceptible to, things like mind control and panic, for instance. And the problem that one of the problems, I say, and one of the major problems I would say that the Mutogs have is that a siren will come into the map and it'll come in with between 32 and 40 will points, where your Mutog has 20 or 24, depending on what head it has. So the siren can just come running up to your Mutog, and they're very fast, the sirens are, so they can cover a bunch of ground. It's 1 action point to mind control, so they can move 3/4 of their speed and then mind control your Mutog, and all of a sudden your Mutog is her Mutog, and it's turning against you, and you have to deal with that. So, and there's really nothing you can do about that for the most part. So what they did is, the other change that they made is the ones that have this poison head, instead of 20 willpower, now have 40 willpower, which is more than the sirens have. I think it's the same as what the Siren Aramis has, which is the orichalcum plated one, which is basically the biggest one, or the most powerful one. I think it has 40 coming in as well. So all of the rest of them can't even mind control your Mutog until it starts to lose will points for whatever reason. And I think that's a really, really strong change that needed to happen. Unfortunately, it's only the poison-headed ones. The ones that have the ramming head like this didn't get that upgrade. They still only have 24 will points, and so they're still susceptible to that. So you do have to kind of be careful about that too. So, but those are the changes that they made to the Mutogs. And like I said, reducing the deployment cost, I think, was a really, really good change, because now it's not as big of a deal to bring one of these guys along. And they are workhorses. I mean, they're tough. Even the weakest one is almost 1500 health. And so they have a lot of staying power on the battlefield, especially the ones that have the regen legs. And the ones with the agile legs are very fast, so they can move around fast and kind of get out of trouble if they need to and whatnot. So very, very good situationally speaking. I think, though, that having the deployment cost of 2 instead of 3 is going to make them a lot more palatable to bring along in place of 2 soldiers instead of 3 soldiers. I think that's going to be a more palatable decision. One thing, though, that you do have to keep in mind, you can still only put one of them on a plane, even though they're, you can't have, 3 of these guys on a Manticore. Only one vehicle per plane. That includes Mutogs. So if you want to bring 2, you have to have 2 planes. So that's the quick changes they made to the Mutogs. This DLC wasn't specifically about them, but they did show them a little bit of love, and I think that's a really good choices that they made. I think it makes them, like I said, makes them a lot more worth taking than they were before. The last thing that they added was Chaos weapons. These are personal weapons for your soldiers. And there are 5 of them, as you can see. And they're actually quite good. They're a little bit weird how they work. So how all of these weapons work is, every time you fire them, there is an increasing chance that the weapon is going to malfunction. Okay. Because they're made by the crazy maker guy, and he kind of rigs things up and just kind of makes it work as best he can. And so sometimes they fail, and sometimes they fail spectacularly. And so what happens is, it starts with a 0% chance to fail. So your first shot's always going to be okay. Every shot that you take, and when I say every shot, I'm talking about every shot or every burst, right? A burst of what, like the assault rifle has a burst of 8. 8-round burst is one shot. So every shot that you take increases the chance that it's going to malfunction by 2%. Okay. So 2%, next shot is 4%, next shot is 6%, etc. That percentage climbs, and there is a chance that you're going to fumble the next shot based on what that percentage is. So if you fumble, the weapon kind of goes into danger mode, I guess is what you might call it, right? So you fumble the attack, you lose the action points, the weapon doesn't fire. After that, you have a choice. You can fire the weapon again, and there's a chance it's going to explode, okay? If it explodes, it destroys the weapon. It does a little bit of damage to your soldier. It's not a lot. It's not a big explosion. It's 10 or 20 points. And then it also will do poison or acid if that's what the weapon has. A couple of these weapons have some special extra abilities. So it may explode or it may not. If it doesn't explode, it resets. And you're good to go again until you fumble again. And then the next time you fumble, you have to make the choice. Am I going to try and shoot this weapon again or not? And the percentage chance that you're at is the percentage chance it's going to explode. And so that continues, and it continues to increase by 2% until you get to 40%. Once you're at 40%, as near as I can tell, it doesn't increase the chance anymore, and the weapon becomes stable at that point. I was able to use a weapon up to 40%, and I fired it quite a few times at 40% and never had it fumble or anything like that. So I'm not 100% sure about this, but it looked like from the little bit of experimenting that I did that once it hits 40%, it's safe to use pretty much forever, as far as I can tell. The trade-off for this weird ability and the possibility that you're going to fumble attacks and the possibility that it's going to explode is that these weapons are actually quite good. Okay, so the handgun, 50 damage, which is pretty in line with most handguns, but it's burst 2 instead of just single shot for still 1 action point, and it's got 10 piercing. Effective range 22 is also very high for a handgun. I believe the Hephaestus laser pistol from Synedrian has approximately 22 for its effective range 2. It might be 24. I'm not sure, but it's right in that ballpark. Whereas the new Jericho and the Independent and the Phoenix Point guns are much lower at like the 14 to 16 to 18 range. So this is actually a really, really good handgun. You know, the piercing and the burst alone make it really good. So that's the trade-off, right? You have the chance it's going to fumble and you have the chance that it's going to blow up, but it also does a lot of extra damage, which is really great. So that's the handgun. There's the shotgun. Same idea, 50 damage, but also does 5 acid per shot that hits. So you're going to be shredding a whole bunch of armor with acid with this thing. It's a burst of 8 times 50. You got 400 potential damage. Effective range 19. Again, decent for a shotgun. Most of the shotguns don't have that high of a effective range. 2 action points to fire. Really good. All of these have no ammo, by the way. None of these use ammo. So you can continue firing these things as long as you want. You never have to reload them, just like the Ancients weapons or the living weapons. The next one in line, I don't have these in order. I apologize. I should have put these in order. Next thing in line is the Obliterator, which is the assault rifle. 40 damage, burst of 8 with 1 shred per. Effective range 25, which again, decent for an assault rifle, and 2 action points. So it's better than the Ares, and it's better than the Bulldog. So the Bulldog is 40 times a 4-round burst. This is 40 times an 8-round burst. So this is actually quite a lot more damage that it's pushing out than the Bulldog is. Twice as much, in fact, with the same amount of shredding if everything hits. So awesome, really good gun. Still good effective range too. The Demos Synedrian assault rifle has a better effective range than this, but still, I mean, it's a laser. It's going to have better range. The sniper rifle is really good as well. 130 damage, which is more than the new Jericho rifle. Also add 30 poison onto that with the 51 effective range, which is, I think, the same as your, I think 51 is the same as the Firebird. I'm not 100% sure. It's close to the same as the Pythagoras laser sniper rifle too. 3 action points. So you're doing 30 poison damage plus the 130. Pretty good. And good effective range, good accuracy. So, and then the cannon, the Devastator heavy cannon, is similar to the Hell 2 cannon. 150 damage base with 150 shock, but it's a burst 2 and effective range 17, which is pretty good too for a heavy cannon. So 3 action points to use this. This is another one of those where you can daze your target with the shock damage if you hit, and it's doing 300 damage instead of 200 like the Hell Cannon if both rounds hit. Now, both rounds hitting, that's questionable unless you're right on top of them. But again, this thing doesn't use ammo. So all of these weapons then become decent use cases for the Rage Burst skill for your heavies, if your heavy is proficient with the weapon. Normally I don't like Rage Burst because it chews up a bunch of ammo and it's not particularly accurate. You just basically pick a direction and your guy fires 5 shots in that direction. With this, it doesn't matter because you're not using ammo. Well, I mean, it matters if you don't hit anything, I guess, but you're not using the ammo, and it still only counts as 1 shot, even though you're taking actually 5 shots. It's still only 1 attack, so it still only increases your fumble chance by 2%, even if you do the Rage Burst. So if you're going to do Rage Bursts, I would recommend doing them with one of these guns because you don't have to feed it ammo. So that's going to be it for these weapons. The last change that they made, and this is just a map change, is all of your sites on the geoscape that give rewards like material rewards, materials, tech, food, that's all been increased by 25%, just a straight across the board boost to the amount of rewards you get out of these sites. They wanted to increase the payout just a little bit because things are getting kind of expensive, I think, and just to make it a little bit easier for people to afford all of these new modules. That's kind of one of the downsides of these modules, is they're not cheap, even after you do the Kaos Syndicate. So let me talk about that for 1 second too. I've got the map revealed here. You'll have to find the Kaos Syndicate on your own. It's usually really close to Phoenix Point, though, as far as I've been able to tell. So it's usually within a pretty short distance of Phoenix Point. But what happens is when you get here to this haven, you meet the Maker, which is the guy who's building all of this stuff. And the Maker is going to send you on 4 missions. For each mission, you're going to recover a different vehicle for him to tinker with. The first one is well, they're basically just in order. The first one is the Scarab. The second one's the new Jeric Armadillo. The third one is the Espida. And then the fourth one, you have to go find his Kaos Buggy that he lost. And so with each one of those missions that you do, well, after the first one, the marketplace opens, right? So you can fly up to the marketplace here, which we will do real quick. You can visit the marketplace and you can buy all of these things here, all the different modules. What he's got is what he's got, though, right? And so you'll have to come back the next day, right? Offers change every day. These things are very, very expensive when you first start out. But with every one of those extra missions that you complete, which you also pick up from this haven, it'll be over here is where you pick up the mission. Each one that you pick up gives you a decrease in the cost, or a discount in the cost of the stuff in the market, until you get the 4th mission done, at which point the prices are down as low as they're going to go. And so that's how you get all of this stuff. And if you want to be able to build the vehicle modules yourself, you can basically buy the blueprints from him in the market as well. Because I've opened up all of the tech in this, I've got them already, so they're not for sale here, but they will be for sale in your game when you complete the 4th mission, maybe even before that. I'm not sure. I think you get each one as you complete that particular mission. So when you find the Scarab for the Maker, then the Scarab blueprints become available to you, and so do the modules, and then so on down the line. And so they're not particularly difficult missions, but they're kind of fun. I don't want to spoil too much. I'll just let you do the missions. I'm not going to talk about the missions too much, other than to say they're missions that you can do right away. You don't have to wait necessarily for your soldiers to get trained up. You're not up against super strong things. The new Jericho one can be tougher, I guess, the Armadillo one. But aside from that, they're pretty straightforward. So that's how you get all of these modules and how you get a hold of the weapons. You can't build the hand weapons, the soldiers' personal weapons at all. You have to buy them from the Chaos Haven here in the marketplace. So you'll come here. every day the selection changes, and once you buy something, right, it's gone out of the list, right? So that's gone. We just bought that and it's gone. So you can't keep buying stuff. You can buy what's here, but you can't like buy the same thing more than once. Like if you wanted two of the assault rifles, for instance, you'd have to have it listed here twice. Prices also vary. So keep an eye on the prices. Sometimes they're really expensive. Sometimes they're really, really cheap. So like here's a Taurus cannon for only 155 materials. That's not too bad. But this jet booster 620. So the prices seem pretty random. You'll even see the same, like here we go, 2 reinforced cargo racks. One of them's 200 and the other one's 160. So there's no difference between them. It's just one costs more than the other. That's all. So mind the prices, and you know, if you see something fairly cheap, grab it maybe if you want. So I think that's going to about do it, guys. I think that we're going to call this an episode. If you've enjoyed it, do me a big favor, hit that like button for me. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.